Hi, my name is Linda, and I'm going to try to answer the question for you of when can I take my lid and airlock off of my jar? When can I take my airlock off and use the stopper? Well, the short answer is you don't take it off. You leave it on till you eat to the bottom of the jar. So someone would say, well, then why do you include a stopper? Well, the reason why we include the stopper is it's really for transport. So let's say I'm taking this to a church event like I did last week, or a family event like I'm going to next week. I would take the airlock off of the top because it's a little awkward. It sticks up. It's just easier to even break off. So I'm going to take that off, put my stopper in, use it for transport, and then when I get back home, if there's any left, then I would put the airlock back on. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you transport it, it's sitting out on a warm table and it's increasing in temperature, then it's going to get active again and start producing more carbon dioxide, which is going to need to escape. If you've got your stopper in there, you want to be aware of this, and so you may need to come over and burp it every so often. But generally speaking, you're just going to leave your airlock on top. Now, the long answer is there are kind of two reasons as to why we leave the airlock in. The first is that this is a living food that we're dealing with. Whether, let's say you've got sauerkraut here, cabbage from one year to the next varies, from one patch varies to the next, and from one season, part of the season, like late fall cabbage is going to be different than early spring cabbage. So because of this variation of living foods, you're also going to have a variation in the amount of carbon dioxide and gas that's being produced and the amount of time that something needs. So let's say when we put it in the refrigerator, last year my sauerkraut, I could tell it was ready to eat at 11 weeks. This year, if I put it in the refrigerator, maybe it's not going to be ready until 13 weeks. So if I have put it in the refrigerator with the stopper, then I have interrupted the fermenting process because there's variations in temperature, there's variations in humidity, there's variations in atmospheric pressure, and all of that makes it a little harder to just predict, step 1, step 2, step 3 as if we had a Betty Crocker recipe. So because of the huge amount of variation, we recommend leaving your airlock on your lid. Now, a second reason why we recommend leaving this on, let's say I have decided that this is done and I were to put my stopper in, I put it in the refrigerator, and in reality there's still some significant amount of fermenting going on. What's going to happen is without the airlock to allow for the exhaling of the carbon dioxide, the stopper is going to keep that carbon dioxide inside, and it's going to begin creating pressure. Okay, so what's the big deal about pressure? Well, scientists, just some recent scientific studies are bringing out that lactic acid producing bacteria actually become misshapen under pressure. So let's say if this is a normal shape that they should be, then they kind of become bent and twisted. Okay, so then the question is, if they are misshapen, are we going to be getting as beneficial a probiotic food as if we were eating normally formed lactic acid bacteria? If it's under pressure and they're a little bit twisted and misshapen, we're wanting a probiotic food that goes into our digestive tract and really does a good job of digesting other food and bolstering our immune system. But if they're misshapen, scientists just don't know yet, is that truly going to be as beneficial a lactic acid, a fermented food as if it were normally formed lactic acid bacteria. So for that reason, we really do recommend you leave your lid on, you leave your airlock on until you've eaten down to the bottom of the jar. Now, some people will say, oh my, that's so tall, I hardly have room in my jar. Well, we have a little bit of a help for you. We have a second airlock here. It's a short 2-piece airlock instead of the 3-piece airlock with the bubbler in the middle. And it still functions exactly like a normal airlock. So if you were to put this in your jar, you would save yourself, it looks like they're about 1.5 inches, maybe 1.75 inches, and that might be just enough space to allow you to keep a jar with an airlock in your refrigerator. And I know sometimes it's a little hard to reconfigure our refrigerators. I myself have between 20 and 30 different jars, 25 maybe different jars of fermented foods, and I actually have a whole refrigerator primarily dedicated. And I realize that's not optimal for everyone. But if that's not an option, then the short airlock might be an interim solution so that we can keep an airlock and a lid on our ferments, keeping it full of well-shaped lactic acid bacteria so that it continues to be a living, healing probiotic food. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for listening, and I hope you're going to be healthy for eating all this wonderful fermented food.